Hi, it's Lee Gardner here. The receipts for inheritance tax for the last tax year were over 6.4 billion. That's a 0.9 billion increase on the previous tax year. It probably explains why I seem to be getting a lot of inquiries from people that are concerned about inheritance tax and want to understand what their position is. Now, every individual has a nil rate band of 325,000 that they can pass down to their beneficiaries before there's any inheritance tax liability. There is also potentially a further property nil rate band of an additional 175,000 that also potentially can be passed down. So in theory, you could pass down on death to your beneficiaries £500,000 before inheritance tax comes into play. And the inheritance tax rate that you pay for your estate over the nil rate band is 40%. Now, normally the way most people's wills are written is if they die, it passes to their spouse and vice versa. Now, the good news is there is no inheritance tax between man and wife. So what happens? Mr. pops his clogs, all of his estate passes across to Mrs. Mrs. then subsequently dies, and then the value of the estate then passes down a generation. Now, the good news is if you didn't utilise the nil rate band for when Mr. died, this can be transferred to Mrs. and therefore potentially £1 million, almost went a bit bad, £1 million could be passed down to your beneficiaries before inheritance tax becomes a problem.